Everybody. Welcome to our next iteration of programming here with the Department of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion for Greater Albany Public Schools. My name is Javier Cervantes. I am the Executive Director for the department. A few months back, I was having a conversation with a number of people at the, the Albany Public Schools Foundation. And we just happened upon the conversation around what are we going to do for Women's History Month. And then it occurred to me that I was listening to Patricia speak, and I said, she has such a great story, you know? And then it occurred to me, why not have a conversation and ask some questions of her? And then I thought, well, her daughter graduated from some of the GAP schools, so why not include her daughter? And so that's how this happened, essentially, just having a conversation in a regular meeting. And I thought it would be great to have Romina join Patricia as two women of GAPS, if you will, you know, because they have some unique story and history here. And I think we can learn from what they have to share. So I came up with some questions that I want to facilitate a conversation with folks and hear from them and hear what they have to say. So I asked Patricia to be nice to Romina and to share the microphone, because Patricia, as we know, likes to pontificate and think and share and express. And then Patricia says to me, well, Romina's the same way. So I'm going to ask them both to share the mic. So yes. So I'm going to do a brief bio. They sent me both their biography here, so I'm going to go ahead and read that for you all. And from there, we'll go ahead and get started. Sound good? Patricia, Romina, you guys are good?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, fantastic. So Patricia Martinez was born in Chiclayo, Peru. She lived in Lima, Peru, where she studied architecture and received her bachelor's degree in architecture in urbanism in 1993. She moved to Eugene in April of 2002 with her 5-year-old daughter, Romina. She received her English as a second language degree from Lane Community College in 2004. Arriving on a tourist visa extending her stay, she became an undocumented immigrant, a status she stayed in for 5 years. In order to support her family, she worked as a hostess, waitress. She had a small business of decorative boxes with Peruvian designs, which she sold in the Eugene Saturday market and gave them private Spanish classes as well. In 2008, she was hired as a bilingual assistant in GAPS, a position she does not hold now. She's actually a bilingual 2 translator here in the school district. So that is Patricia's biography there. And then we have Romina. Romina came to Albany and started with GAPS at North Albany Middle School. She later attended West Albany High School and graduating in the class of 2015. Without completely knowing what to study after high school, she took advantage of Oregon Promise program and explored the options, and also attained an associate's in communications degree in arts from Lynn Benton Community College. The following year, she attended the University of Oregon and was accepted into the architecture program. She now works as a designer and job captain at Robertson Sherwood Architects, a local architecture firm, and is working to become an Oregon registered architect by the end of 2022. That is 2 impressive people that I am very happy to have here as our guests today. We'll be talking a little bit and just having a conversation with Romina and Patricia and Romina. So I'm not giving one person more credit than the other. So with that said, I have some questions for you. As you know, I want to go ahead and have you just relax a little bit, take a deep breath, think about the questions a little bit, and then we can actually have some conversation. If anybody in the audience would like to put a question in the chat, please do so. If not, we can also have a conversation afterwards, which will help us move this along as well. I don't think, I know we'll have plenty of time to be able to do that. So I guess the first question is, since we're celebrating Women's History Month, and the accomplishments and contributions of women, I believe your story and testimony of perseverance is one that is kind of like moving and gives a lot of people inspiration. Would you mind sharing your first memory, Patricia, of dropping Romina off at school the first day here in the United States, if you can remember that? Give us a taste of what it was like as a mom, an immigrant who spoke little English, what it was like leaving your little one at school for the first time in the United States.
Well, thank you for having us today, Javier. When you told me about this idea, yes, I overthinking because it was a catharsis for me to remember my story here in this country. So many years ago, it looks like for me as a movie passed in my mind. To answer that question, the truth was that I was terrified. I was terrified because I myself had already experiences where I couldn't participate in conversations because even though I could understand some phrases, some words, my speed to respond was very limited. So many times I felt left out or not included. And I was terrified that my daughter would feel the same way. Of course, my goal was that Romina never noticed that, my nervousness, when I took it to school. And I was just very lucky that I think Romina had this personality. She's always very social. And I think her need to communicate her ideas was so big that helped her to learn very fast English. She was 5 years old. She went to kindergarten. So it was I think was the right time, maybe if I need to think about that, to move, because she was just starting a new chapter in her life.
So, Romina, what do you remember about that the first times that you were going to the school here in the United States, in Eugene, and then here in Albany? Can you tell us a little bit about what that felt like?
Yeah, so I don't necessarily remember my first day ever, like in kindergarten in Eugene. But now that my mom brought up her nerves, I do remember seeing some of them. And it wasn't due to like the school, but it was more that I kind of got on like the wrong bus, and then my mom didn't know where I was being dropped off. And so that didn't have a great start to the school year as a 5-year-old, or I don't even know how old I was.
So did you get on the wrong bus? Did you get on the wrong bus?
I did, yeah.
Oh.
And so my mom was a little scared to find out that I wasn't home. But as far as challenges that I faced, at least through grade school, my mom brought up that I was a part of like the English Learning Development Program here in Eugene. And I noticed that like a lot of the kids that I started out with, they weren't like graduating it as early as I was. And so that kind of made me have to shift my friend groups at that time. So I didn't know if I fit in with the ELD students, or like, was I more like just like commonly speaking English now, you know? And I could definitely tell that I didn't know how to fit in either. And then I actually moved to Buena Vista, which is a Spanish immersion school here in Eugene. And so at that point, everyone was learning Spanish. So I kind of felt like that integration was pretty easy, and I made friends really quickly. And then came middle school, which was another story because I left all my friends, and moving into a middle school by yourself is like very scary to think about. But I adapted and I persevered. And so it definitely helped to have my mom there for sure.
Did you, how quickly did you adapt and evolve, were able to integrate yourself into your middle school experience here in GAPS and your high school experience?
I think by high school I was I pretty much knew, you know, who my friends were. I don't know if I clearly knew who I was yet. I'm still trying to figure that out, but I definitely felt better going into high school. In middle school, it's just a weird time. I think everyone can really understand that middle school, you know, you're fighting with your parents, but you also don't know who your friends are, and you're here in a new school, and it's overwhelming. I remember telling my mom that I wanted to transfer all the time because I didn't have any friends, or I didn't know who my friends were because everyone had their, volleyball groups or, after school programs that everyone's been going to forever. And I was kind of the new kid. I think it was 7th grade where I felt that I had been in clubs now and through Boys and Girls Club in Albany. I was getting out more, like I was, putting myself out there more. And then that's when I started to feel like, okay, this isn't all that bad.
Yeah, because, it's interesting you mentioned that, because we see right now in this particular moment in time, very, very different than when you were going to school, obviously with the pandemic and everything, that we're starting to see kind of like a lot of the students struggle trying to figure out their socialization in middle school, and that transition from, their bodies are changing, their minds are changing, they're learning so much, there's more information coming at them every single day, and a lot of things that what you're describing are very similar still of what we hear, but it's also kind of like interesting with the pandemic changing. If you're going to give some advice to a middle schooler, going back to, if you can remember that far back, of, trying to adapt and adjust like what you were describing, what would it be?
It would be I don't know, because if I was getting some advice, I would just be panicking, thinking that I don't know when this is going to happen. So I guess to just be patient, and with time, you'll figure it out, or with time, it'll reveal, who your friends are, like what you want to do, what sport you want to play. Yeah, just be patient.
Excellent. I think that's probably good advice for all of us that are adults too, as difficult as that is, for us to be patient with students as well, I'd imagine. Patricia, you've experienced, well, actually, I want to go back to one question, one thing that Romina said. How did you actually adapt, or what did you do when you found out that your little one actually was in a wrong bus? What did you do?
It was interesting. I didn't remember that until Romina said. You know what? When you move to another country, you are yourself figuring out the system. First the language, then the system, how this works. The school works in different way. We transport our kids to school. This is a school bus. The kids have lunch in the schools. How is there lunch in the school? So to tell you the truth, I volunteer a lot for kindergarten to figure it out this. So like I was lucky to have a kindergarten teacher who allows me to be in the class with very limited English, and help me to understand how Romina will learn English. That is different that I learn English as an adult. So to figure out the bus route, it was a scary moment because not many bilingual people were in the schools. My English was very limited. I sometimes at that age, Romina didn't understand why I was so scared. Why you are reacting like that? But I was by myself in another country with a daughter who was my 100% responsibility. I didn't have family. I have friends. Thank God. So it was a scary moment, and I thank God that I found somebody in the school who can communicate with me a little bit. And those 3 phrases, your daughter is in this school number, that, it just helped me so much in that moment, because those little phrases, 3 words in Spanish for me mean a lot. I find my daughter, I saw where she was, and after that I can just manage. But it was scary. And
yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine, because actually one of our principals at Lafayette, Elisa, she makes it a point to start her announcements and end her announcements every single day in Spanish. She says something in Spanish. It doesn't matter that if the Spanish is proper or it's broken, but she tries to make an attempt to actually have the students in that school who are speaking Spanish and the parents who are outside waiting to hear at least a little bit of something that they can actually relate to. So I really appreciate you mentioning how just those 3 phrases from a person that you didn't really know much could actually make you feel so much more included. I think those are kind of little tips that things people can actually incorporate. And it might be, a lot of people here in the United States, we kind of we're perfectionists, right? We want to say everything right. We don't want to make a mistake, and people don't want to look like a fool, and they don't want to sound foolish or whatever. But there's some vulnerability to that, and it kind of is necessary for us to be able to break some of these barriers, right? I think that's probably important for us to think about. You both experienced gaps from very different viewpoints. Patricia, you as a mom who was learning a new culture and a language, and Romina, you as a student, you were moving from one district to another. What can schools learn from both of your unique experiences?
Do you want to go first, Mom?
I go first. I think perhaps the most important thing for schools is to remember that when you serve, in my case, English speaking student, like a learner's English student, you are serving a whole family. You are serving, that student comes with other people behind the student. The student is learning English, but the family probably is not in the same level that the student. And what we need to remember is that we cannot take away the power of the parent to be involved in the life of the student. I, as a parent, I want to know everything.
She knew everything.
I want to know about what is she eating at lunch. I want to know what is her schedule, because it's a precious thing. Romina, you're going to learn this in the future, but it's just so important, that communication, that we don't let the parents out of this, because it's the right to be involved in these situations.
Romina?
Mom, you were, even as a English second language learner, you were like more involved than students that I knew that were not English. You know what I mean? Like, it was insane, which is great, but I feel like what I benefited the most, I guess, from gaps, were the courses offered at West Albany. I later learned, coming out of my little bubble in high school and coming out to college, that not many high schools offered the courses that I was able to take advantage of and get credits for. I graduated with over 60 college credits in high school. And that was because they were available to me. I know that I obviously, worked really hard to get to be able to take advantage of those. But it made me going to LBCC and then going into the university much easier and much at ease to know that like I have time to like explore all these other courses or classes that might interest me versus like having to take like standard, required classes. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think having access to the richness of an academic, kind of that academic rigor is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Really important. I think that can't be said enough, right? Having access, be it for us as a school district to be able to make sure that every single one of our students has access to all of that.
Yeah, right.
Because we have two high schools. Actually, we have three high schools, right? Three high schools here. And they're all successful in their own way, and they all struggle in different ways as well,
Mm-hmm.
and learning from your experience and from Patricia's experience, I think is really, really critical for us to be able to improve on those systems, right? I mean, equity is the work that I do, right? And I think we really need to actually put that lens on how we do this systemically to improve outcomes of what you're talking about. The fact that you actually took advantage of a statewide systemic program to be able to go to LBCC and figure out where you wanted to go, what you wanted to do and transfer and all that stuff is so, it's one of those things that a lot of people, I think, underestimate that connection to LB just up the road.
I can't take full credit for that because my mom was definitely the one that was showing me the courses and, like, well, you have this missing assignment. So once you get that done, you can pass this, And so I always had that in the back of my head. So I never really had to like go out there myself and find it. But what I did do instead was like some of my friends, at least in high school, specifically one of my friends whose mom was like working like 2 jobs and she didn't know any English, you know, and she didn't really check up on her as much. I was giving her the information that my mom was giving me as far as courses went, you know, so at least I was able to distribute that. So,
You know, that's funny because that's Patricia, you providing that information and filtering it down to Romina, and her filtering it down to other colleagues and other peers in school. I mean, that's quite the reach, you know, and being able to do that. I mean, community. I mean, that's what we talk about. That's what we talk when I mention being from a collectivist community. That's exactly what that looks like. Being a collectivist community is to share the information and the knowledge word of mouth from people that you trust. And it's one of the good things that I remember recently having a conversation about a lot of misinformation about the that's on social media with what's related to COVID, right? And I remember in one of our staff meetings with Patricia is saying, you know, what we need to tell and need to share with families is good quality information. And one of the things I'm very proud of here at the school district is they can go to our webpage to receive good quality information, both in English and in Spanish, you know, to interrupt some of that misinformation that's out there. Patricia?
Because it shows respect. As a parent, I want that respect. You know, when you provide that quality of translation, a quality of good information, shows respect for me, and it shows the people that works in that organization. It shows that the principal is respecting their students. It shows that the teacher is sending the information in a correct language. It shows respect, and that is huge.
I think that can't be overstated, quite frankly. And respect in the Latino community is huge, right? Your word is your bond, and people have a long memory when we don't remember that. I want to ask Romina, give us a little bit of insight as to the best advice you received from your mom. What helped you through your schooling, having her in your ear all the time? What was that like?
I think I was very stumped when I saw this question because there's a lot of advice that my mom's given me. But I think the best advice, or at least the most effective and the one that I've definitely thought about a lot, is to, even though things might be hard right now, to always like think of helping your future self, you know, whether that be through taking the time and doing like essays after essays or applications of scholarships that you might not actually get, you know. I was so burnt out on doing that at the end of the high school year. And I remember telling my mom, like, I don't know why I'm doing this if I know I'm like not getting half of these already, you know. But it was still the work and the time putting into yourself, into your future self, you know. And I think about that a lot. I think about that in college. I thought about that a ton, you know, having to put time aside and maybe not be able to go hang out with my friends, or, you know, but that was chosen by myself for myself. So it was a good example for me to look back on and see that I like persevered.
So Patricia, I'm going to ask you the opposite question then, I guess, or from Romina's perspective. What advice has Romina given you as a daughter that has helped you actually be successful?
Well, Romina is my best teacher. She's the moment that she born, she was my best teacher in many ways. But I think one of the most important things that she teach me is sometimes try to don't judge in many ways. Sometimes I think everybody has this bias, and I need to be honest. Sometimes I have those, and she teach me through her example that sometimes, you know, I was in trust, you know. Sometimes I was thinking, well, if you don't do this, you're not going to be able to do that or whatever. But sometimes we just need to trust our kids or believe in them. I believe it in her, but I was just very worried that if I wasn't less strict, or if she didn't have an A in that test, she's not going to be able to be successful. And that really is not what I was teaching. In the end, I was teaching responsibility. And that thing is the most important part. So Romina teach me that part, that it's not that I'm going to be the perfect, maybe, a student all the time, A+, but she has good grades and she works hard and teach me that is valuable, like she has those grades because she works hard, and it's not about the plus A, it's about the value that she put in that work.
One of the things that I hear when you say that, for me, Patricia, is I hear lessons, I hear myself talking to students and kind of imparting this thought to them. And I say, a lot of students don't feel like they belong or they don't deserve to go to college, or they don't deserve to graduate high school. They don't belong in the school that they're at. I hear that. I've heard that a number of times throughout my career, and it always comes down to this kind of self-doubt that I hear from students. I hear this self-doubt creep into their mind, and it hurts to hear students self-doubt themselves, and not believe they're smart enough or they don't deserve, Romina, go ahead.
I think just when you were saying self-doubt, I definitely had a lot of self-doubt. As much as I had, my cheerleader of a mom, like cheering me on in the back, I always had self-doubt. And it wasn't because of necessarily of like, oh, I don't know if I can do it. It was like, oh, I failed. Like I remember, I'm not the perfect child or student, but like I definitely remember the times where I did fail my mom or I failed myself. I always weighed more than the times that I didn't, and that self-doubt definitely built up to be, this entire like insecurity blanket that I held for a long time because of all of my all of my achievements were just completely diminished, And so I really do relate to a lot of people that do say that like, oh, I don't know if I can make it through college, and like, I don't know. It's not just doubtful. It's maybe like them just focusing on the negative of like what's happened, or like not seeing that everything that they've already accomplished is still something to hold on to,
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that was going to lead me to my next point, in the sense that self-doubt really doesn't, getting over that self-doubt, getting over that by just accomplishing, moving on and progressing, regardless of how you do it, the panzazo, it doesn't matter if you get the C or the A+, like Patricia was talking about. The idea is that you progress, right? And that you keep learning, right? That's the idea. And that's the kind of thing I want to impart to the people that I talk to and here in the room is imparting that understanding that school, be that in middle school, elementary school, middle school, high school, junior, community college, university, master's, PhD program, has little to do with actual intelligence. Sure, you have to be smart, and sure, you have to make wise choices, but it really has to do with perseverance and not giving up. That's the one thing I realized after so many years. I'm 50 years old now, and I wish I would have had that information when I was a lot younger. But I've realized that about education. It has to do with, obviously you have to have the desire to want to learn, but just not giving up, I think, is the most important thing that I can impart personally to students when I hear Patricia and you both speak, so I appreciate you both mentioning that. Patricia, I'm going to go and wrap this up with this one question here, and it was kind of one that threw off Romina at first, I think, when she responded over online, and I was very interested in this dynamic about yourself, and then I'll ask Romina to respond to it as well. You've reinvented yourself professionally a couple of times, and that idea of reinventing yourself and becoming something else, doing something else, I think is kind of inspirational for a lot of, especially for women, I think, to being able to see that they're not just cut out to be one thing, that you can be multiple things. You can be multiple things. You can be multiple things at the same time. And then you can actually shrink and be just that one thing for a little while as well. You know, you mentioned you were a waitress, a hostess, you were an entrepreneur for a while, you used your artistic self, you know, and then you've reinvented yourself into become a translator after having been an architect in Peru, you know. I mean, that idea of reinvention, I think, is really, really critical to a lot of Latinas that would hear your message today. What would you say about that concept of reinvention and not necessarily just staying stagnant and reimagining yourself in a different way?
Well, I think life takes you from different ways, no? My decision to move from one country to another country, my degree was in one language. I was here. The plan was that maybe I can work as an architect, but I realized very soon that it was impossible for me. I had to go through a path as an international student. You can imagine how much money would I be paying for that classes. But I think for me was what give you education. It doesn't matter what you were studying. What the college gave me, it was organizational skills. It was a responsibility. It was creating processes. All of these tools that maybe you don't realize consciously, but put you in, when you change your life, like what I did, I use those tools. I use my tools that I learned from college, and of course my Spanish. My Spanish is my strength language, and I think when you are in need, you become very creative because you need to survive. I was in a surviving mood, and I had to raise a daughter. I had to, continue living and learning. And I think that was the most important. And all of these steps that I was doing with Romina were preparing me for this job. Now I am the mom who received the things that I translate. So that's what I think is very important for me, the job that I'm doing, because I put myself in the shoes of that mother. And I want all the parents to have a successful stories in with their kids. No, that's what we want when we have a kid. We want their kid be independent, whatever she choose to do, college or other careers or other trades, professions or careers. What we want is that we want to see our kids independent. And I think that's why all of these situations and good and bad experience prepare me to do right now my job, the job that I'm doing.
So if I would be so bold to ask to close out this, because it wouldn't be fair if I would not ask you to, or both of you, if you're comfortable doing it, a message in Spanish to parents who might see this later on. What message or advice to parents would you give en español? ¿Qué tipo de sugerencias o consejos les das a los padres que pueden, tal vez son bilingües ellos o quieren escuchar este mensaje en español? ¿Qué mensaje les mandas a ellos en su idioma?
Pues para mí que nuestra meta siempre han sido nuestros hijos. No olvidarnos de esa meta. A veces nos concentramos en 2 trabajos o en 3 trabajos, pero ¿cuál es nuestra meta? ¿Para qué vinimos a este país? ¿Para qué? Para buscar un mejor futuro, ¿no? Entonces, concentrémonos en esa meta, no nos olvidemos y participemos en la educación de nuestros hijos porque somos los mejores defensores de nuestros hijos. Conocemos sus experiencias, conocemos sus debilidades, conocemos sus fortalezas y nadie más que nosotros sabemos lo que ellos necesitan y a lo que pueden llegar.
That's too good not to say it in English. So
I was like what she said.
Exactly. I asked for Patricia to give some advice to parents who might listen to this in Spanish. Patricia, would you share a little bit of what you just mentioned? Would you share what you shared? And then I'm going to have Romina. If you're comfortable, you can. If you don't want to, that's okay too. I totally get it. So it's all good.
Okay.
I just say that for parents, immigrants like me, What was our goal when we moved from one country to another country? To find a better future for our kids. So that goal, sometimes we miss the goal. We concentrate in our lives and to make a living, no? One job, two jobs, three jobs, but where was the goal that we originate this move? To find this better future for our kids. So don't lose the goal, concentrate on the goal, continue participate and be part of the education of your kids, because you guys are the best advocates for your kids. You know your kid the best. You know the strengths and weaknesses. You know what do you want for your kid.
So close us out, Romina. What are your final thoughts before we open it up for the audience here to ask questions or engage in the conversation? What are your final thoughts after our conversation today?
So I had a quote, but now that my mom said that, it kind of got me to think about something else. That is like a great goal, I feel like, for a parent to have, but something that I always noticed was that I always had that in my head of the pressure of knowing that my parents left everything they had in a country for me to succeed. And what that looked like to them, I felt like I had to fit in, to morph into that success. And it caused a lot of stress in my life. And so my best advice, I guess, would be to, I think I wrote it down here, but there's a different quote, but don't take life so seriously. And I know it's like easier said than done, because I am definitely one that I struggle a lot in this, but don't take life so seriously. I think there's a lot of ups and downs in life, but they are a part of who you are, and nothing defines you, but you define yourself, you know? So
I've used that thought, you sharing about putting a lot of pressure on yourself because of the stories that we hear from the immigrant parent. I never really gave it much thought until you said that. So I remember my father using that on me, and me using that on parents to say, you know, get involved with your students' life and stuff. But it never occurred to me that that's a lot of pressure to put on a youngster. You know, that is a lot of stress and a lot of pressure. So thank you for sharing that. With that said, I want to have the audience chime in, and before we all do that, can you all give me a little emoji thumbs up for an applause, or the little emoji sign for appreciation of Romina and for Patricia for imparting some wisdom and some of their time today. This was great. I really enjoyed talking to well, at least Patricia. Romina, I enjoyed talking to you too, as I don't talk to you as frequently. So but maybe that could actually change in the future, perhaps. So with that said, who has a question? Do we have any questions, Emily, in the chat, or any thoughts, any kind of reactions from our guests today? There's a lot there, so people must be stunned into silence, I have to say.
I appreciate the insights that you guys shared, and I'm wondering, Patricia, particularly working within the district where your daughter is going to school, were there any complexities in that your daughter is also learning English and you are trying to lead within that work within the school district?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, Melissa. Thank you. The good and bad, you know, I translate everything. So I knew everything about processes, about, you know, opportunities and stuff. But at the same time, I had to be very careful when I went to parent and teacher conference and share my point of view of a class, because I was part of the organization too. But of course, the moment that I went to parent and teacher conference, my heart was a mom, and I want the best of the best that you can provide for my daughter. And my always approach was what you can do and what I can do. We are a team. Let me do my job, but help me with the instruction or extra instruction, or maybe redirecting the instruction, or sometimes I knew that some classes were more easy for Romina than other classes. So I was always trying to find that balance, no? But I always, I saw gaps since 2008, and I saw the changes that the organization made, the efforts to find bilingual assistance with good quality of Spanish skills. So I just very, I feel proud that I be part of this process too.
The gaps of today is not the gaps of when you first came or when Romina was starting at North Albany Middle School. It's not the same district. It's a very, very different district in terms of its employees and the students that are attending these schools. And I think I think we struggle with that a little bit. I think we struggle in how to adapt to that reality, And I've shared when I was at LBCC, I shared all this data from GAPS, sharing that our students of tomorrow at LB and at the universities around here are all going to be a lot more diverse, linguistically diverse. Their lived experience is going to be much more diverse. And it's important for all of us to realize that this is just not a phenomenon that's just going to go away. As actually, we're going to be much more profoundly diverse as we get older. The generations that follow me, I'm old already, so I'm, Romina, this might be your problem for the future.
Well, that's good to hear that they're getting more diverse because when I was going to high school, I was like one of 5 Latinas of the entire high school.
Yeah, right now I think it's up at around 13% or just under 13% at West.
Wow.
But obviously we know that South Albany still is much more diverse over there. At right. South, obviously, but there are things that are happening. So no matter what, Latinos, we wiggle our way into every aspect and corner of a place when we're here, making places better. Any last thoughts or comments from our audience that has joined us?
Yeah, I have some things that I took away from the conversations. One, I really appreciate you two sharing your stories. It was really good, and I had a good time listening. One thing that I really stood out to me is Patricia, when you were talked about good quality information and getting that out there to people. And I work with a lot of data, and we always want to get out. And for me, it's always like, oh, I just don't want to sound dumb when I give out bad information. So I always try good, but I never thought about the outcome being that I respect the people that I'm talking to. And seeing that aspect makes me want to think about how I want to approach giving data out to people. So thank you for that. And the second thing from Romina, when you were talking about you had that quote, think of helping your future self. I really appreciate that. I talk to students and I'm like, oh, do this. This is really going to be beneficial, but I don't tell them why it's going to be beneficial or how it's helping them. So that actually helps me a lot when I start engaging with students and helping them think about their future. Anyways, thank you. Those are the 2 comments I wanted to share.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Viviana, you have your hand up.
BB.
Hi, I just want to say that I'm so proud of Romina and Patricia. I know them for many years, and I used to work with Patricia at the Welcome Center. And let me tell you that she checked Romina's attendance and grades almost every single day.
So
that showed parent involvement there, and that's what I learned from her: how to have a deeper parent involvement than our typical Latino parent. And I feel that is because in Mexico and a lot of the Latino countries, we view teachers as almost with authority, with power, and whatever they tell us, we agree with, right? We only go to conference to see how our son and daughter are doing with behavior. How are they behaving? Are they respecting? Are they answering questions? But we don't go deeper on, are they on grade level? Is she in the best class for math? Can she be in an advanced level next year? So I learned a lot from Patricia because she will fight with some teachers about, no, I think my daughter is ready for this course, right? And she will advocate for Romina, and now we can see the final results, how that she's very successful, and she managed to guide her daughter through this journey. And I have learned a lot from Patricia, and I wish we can have this presentation fully in Spanish advantage for our Latino parents to also learn from them, from their experience.
I think this might be a good idea that we figure out how to do this in Espanol, right? I mean, be able to get this out in front of familias and stuff. I think this is a great tool to be able to do that for sure. No doubt about that. Gracias for that, Viviana. I really appreciate that. Unless we have another question, if you are able to put on your camera and give one round of applause to both Romina and to Patricia, I really appreciate it. You guys have been quite inspirational and stellar and outstanding. It was very nice to meet you, Romina. I've heard a lot about you. Your mom talks about you all the time. And it's great. Patricia, it's a pleasure, obviously, working with you on a regular basis and being able to have some great conversations about almost everything in our school district and questions that we have. So thank you both. Everyone, you're free to go. I really appreciate it. If you want to check this out later on and show this
Thank you, Javier.
to some folks, absolutely. You can stick around for a second, Romina and Patricia. I would like to just real quick connect with you. Emily, don't go anywhere.
Muchas gracias, amigos. Adios.
And we'll talk later.
Gracias. Thank you, Heather. I know you're busy.
Bye.
I had to see and hear this and just let you and Romina know. I just think you're amazing, and I have grown from you, Patricia, and Romina. I have grown from you through your mother and all of her wonderful stories. So, sending you guys a lot of love.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming.